Hello, and thank you for joining our Introduction to Design Thinking webinar series. My name is Keith Keating, and I'm a design thinking practitioner with GP Strategies. In this 8-part webinar series, we'll be sharing the theory of design thinking from a high-level overview through each of the 5 phases and finishing with suggestions for ways to continue learning on your journey to becoming a design thinking practitioner. In this session, I will be sharing with you some final concepts and ideas and best practices on applying design thinking. But before we begin, as a quick reminder, design thinking has 5 phases: empathy, define, ideate, prototype, and test. In the empathy phase, we're learning about our audience. We're understanding them, we're identifying their needs, their problems, their challenges, and we're really listening to them, and we're truly trying to understand them. We then take that information and we synthesize it down into the define phase where we define the problem statements. We evolve those into how might we questions to make them more meaningful and actionable. And then we take our how might we questions and we ideate on them. We brainstorm, we create as many ideas as we can, and then we narrow those ideas down and we identify prototypes that we want to create, building quick representations of one or more of those ideas. And then, of course, we test those ideas with our users to get their feedback, to identify if we're on the right track or if we need to go back and ideate or maybe even empathize more with them to truly understand what their challenge is, to make sure that we're defining the right problem and the right solution for them. So I want to share with you a few lessons learned over my years as a design thinking practitioner. First, take notes on the experience of the interviews. Not just the interview itself, but the experience that you had from the moment you walked through the door until the moment you left. From what you observed in the room, what you observed in the office. What did you see on the walls? What was the environment like? Those clues can help down the road as you're truly trying to understand the environment, the customers, the end users. So those notes that I've taken on my experience of the interview have been invaluable for me later on as I try and recall what was that situation like. Empathy interviews take significant planning. As we talked about in the empathy phase discussion, you want to make sure that you brainstorm the questions, you refine the questions, and you practice those questions so that it becomes your own vocabulary, your own language, so you are comfortable when asking those questions so that you can help the person you're interviewing also be comfortable. If possible, dedicated resources for a design thinking initiative can help that initiative move much further along and more smooth. Now, you may not always be able to have dedicated resources, so having one person who can help that initiative continue to drive forward can be very valuable. Create a place to continue fostering design thinking. As mentioned earlier, it's not a one-time event. Design thinking is a mind shift. So create a place where you can continue educating others on your team, others in your group on design thinking, and continue to sharing ideas and best practices and brainstorming. So have a place, it doesn't have to be a physical place, but maybe it's a place virtually where you meet once a month to just continue sharing ideas, best practices, new insights, new research. When conducting the empathy research, avoid yes/no questions. Remember, yes/no questions close the door as quickly as they open it. And your goal is to keep that door of communication open as long as possible. Be aware of our bias and our negative voice. It's part of our human nature. It exists. Remember that you are there to understand, not to validate. And during the ideation phase, be aware of that negative voice. The word no should not exist. It's yes and. Design thinking initiatives are quick. They can be a couple of hours, which may be a little bit too short, to several weeks. The best practice I follow is they should not be longer than 3 weeks from start to finish. Because as time moves on, problems could evolve. Your customers, your users might think that you've forgotten about them and now they're trying to solve the problems for themselves, or they've gone out and they've found their own vendor, or You may not know or have identified the right problem, and so you've spent all this time trying to solve for a problem that you may not have captured correctly before even getting back to the users to validate what you uncovered, if that was accurate or correct. So again, you want to make sure that they're quick, no longer than 3 weeks, and make sure wherever possible that your users are involved during your design thinking initiative. I recommend bringing them into the ideation process so that they're there as a part of that idea, because most likely the same individuals that have the problems may actually have some ideas on how to solve for those problems. So you want to keep them engaged as much as you can throughout the design thinking process. And lastly, design thinking is not a solution for every problem. There's a trend that seems to be moving in the industry where everyone is now saying, oh, we're design thinking everything. And what they probably mean is they're brainstorming or they're using post-it notes in a room to ideate. But just ideating itself is not design thinking. The heart and soul of design thinking is that empathy phase. So if you're just ideating in a room and you haven't conducted any empathy research, you're not talking to any learners, users, customers, patients, then you're just brainstorming. So just keep in mind that design thinking is not a solution for every problem. Now, I want to leave you with some ideas on applications for design thinking in the L&D space. How can we use design thinking? So here are a couple of use cases. How might we improve the learner experience? Design thinking can be used in terms of continuous improvement. So your level 1 surveys might be good. The feedback when you've talked to occasional learners might be positive, but how could you make that experience for them even better? So it's a great use case for design thinking. Now, in the end, you might uncover that what you're doing is absolutely perfect. So then you've validated that your strategy, that your approach, that your learning methodology is solid. That's the best case scenario. Maybe worst case scenario, you identify that they need something else. That to me is also a best case scenario. It's a win-win. You're either validating that what you're doing is correct, or you're uncovering that they may need something else to be even better. And that's what we're here for as learning and development leaders, to help uncover those concepts, those needs, and to help drive performance support and performance improvement. So how might we improve learner experience? From an HR perspective, how might we attract and retain new talent? Again, from an HR perspective, how might we redesign the employee reward system in a way that is meaningful to employees? How might we improve the employee experience and engagement? So as I mentioned in a different session, LinkedIn is currently working on an initiative in Silicon Valley to help improve, or first of all, uncover what the employee experience and engagement issue is, and then of course look to solve that. Telstra, the Australian telecom company, this was an example on how they used it for their onboarding, because they were receiving low feedback and extremely long times to proficiency for new hires. So how might we improve the employee experience and engagement? Or how might we uncover the employee value proposition? And lastly, how might we create a culture to empower creativity, collaboration, and innovation? If I asked each of you to define innovation, most likely you would give me a different definition. So companies are now asking their organizations and employees to be innovative without prescribing or defining what innovation means to that company. So how might we create a culture that empowers creativity, collaboration, and innovation? And the best way to do that is to find out from the people themselves what that means, what the challenge is, and how they might solve that. So it's a great use case for design thinking. So we've talked about the overview of design thinking. We've gone through the 5 phases, and this has been a thorough theoretical discussion. What's next for you on your journey? How do you actually go out and start to apply this without putting yourselves in front of the customer? Because you first want to get experience yourself with these phases and the methodology so that you're comfortable with it. So here are a few skill building ideas that you could consider. You could do this with your family, you You could do it with friends. You could do it with a small group of colleagues at work. You could spend an afternoon. It doesn't have to be a long, lengthy process, but going through the 5 phases, you can apply these 3 ideas. So one, reimagine a wallet. Think of the concept of a wallet and talk to a couple of individuals and find out what do they use a wallet for and understand their usage from a customer perspective, and then reimagine that wallet through the design thinking process. And what you might uncover is that customers actually don't even need a wallet anymore. Maybe you're not reimagining a wallet, maybe you're identifying something else that they actually need. Why do we need a wallet? Another idea, reimagine the airport experience. Most likely, all of you have traveled through an airport. You know where the good airports are, you know where the ones that you dread are, the good food, the ones that are uh, child friendly, the ones that are easy to get through and to navigate. So maybe reimagine the airport experience. Interview a couple of people as airport travelers and uncover what some of their challenges are and come up with ideas on how you could solve for those challenges. And lastly, simply reimagine your favorite product. Design thinking has a very long history with product redesign, from skincare products to shoes to new food types to the electric cordless chargeable toothbrush. All came out of design thinking initiatives. So pick your favorite product, interview a few people on it, and reimagine that favorite product. See what new ideas you might be able to come up with. These are 3 ideas on how you might create new skill building opportunities to practice design thinking. Again, it doesn't need to be lengthy. Get a few people together and go through this initiative so that you can get comfortable with the phases. And that concludes our final session on additional ideas and concepts for applying design thinking. So thank you for joining us. We look forward to sharing more ideas and best practices with you. And at the end of the day, don't forget our most important resource, our learners, our customers, our end users. And in fact, to continue on your design thinking journey, we want to share with you some additional resources that you can consider using. And these resources will be available in a PDF on the site that has clickable links. So the first, of course, is our website that you're using now, our GP Strategies resource page on design thinking that has a plethora of information. We've got our blogs, podcasts, our articles, all of our webinars, a great wealth of information is available on the site. So continue looking through it, accessing this information. Feel free, of course, to share the site with other individuals. There's a book that I recommend called Solving Problems with Design Thinking by Gene Litka. There are 10 use cases, 10 stories with Fortune 500 companies that Gene and her team went through, and it breaks them down into individual use cases and talks through some of the challenges they had, some of the outcomes, lessons learned. So it's a very powerful book on your design thinking practitioner journey. Check out a blog. There's a Design Thinking Success Stories blog that has 40 success stories, and it's broken down by attributes such as industry, retail, hospital, education. So it's a great way to continue educating yourself on use cases for design thinking and where it's been successful and ways that you could think of applying it in your own industry. And then lastly, IBM has recently created a free online MOOC. A MOOC is a massive open online course on design thinking. So check that out. All you have to do is log in, sign up for it. Again, it's free, but you have to create an account and go through that MOOC. And then at the end of that MOOC, you will receive a badge for completing the course. So those are 4 ideas for you to continue on your design thinking practitioner journey for resources. And then, of course, reaching out to me, connecting with me on LinkedIn so we can continue the conversation. I'm very active in posting on LinkedIn, as is GP Strategies. We host other live webinars, often on design thinking. I would love to hear stories from you on your journey, how you're applying it, challenges. Let's keep the discussion going. So please do reach out to me on LinkedIn. Thank you again for joining our 8-part webinar series. We look forward to sharing more ideas and best practices with you in the near future. Thank you.